Today in Fulchester Crown Court, Fiona Gray, a 28-year-old housewife, is charged with maliciously and voluntarily burning the house of another, namely of her husband, Richard Francis Gray.
So what I'm anxious to establish, Miss Tate, is that the accused, Mrs. Fiona Gray, had absolutely no financial interest in the property which burned down, number 7 Adelaide Close. If she had, you will appreciate, the charge of arson would not stand. The property must be not one's own, but that of another.
Yes, my lord, I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, however, my client can in no sense claim to be part owner of the house she once lived in.
Unfortunately, Miss Tate.
The accused husband owned the property and all the furnishings and fittings, and she, as his wife, had nothing to call her own.
I see. Mr. Lloyd, will you proceed?
You are Mrs. Roberta Helder of 5 Adelaide Close, Coldwater Valley.
I am, yes.
5 Adelaide Close, that would be the neighbouring property to number 7, wouldn't it?
Until it was burned down, yes.
Are you acquainted with the accused, Fiona Gray?
Well, naturally, one usually knows the people next door. As a matter of fact, Alex and I, that's my husband, Alex, we were quite close to Fiona and Rick for a time, until it became all too wearisome.
All too wearisome, Mrs. Helder?
We moved to Adelaide Close it'll be 12 months ago, last January. We heard later that things had been bad between the Greys from time immemorial, but we just made friends, you know, broke the odd bottle and crust, and then...
Yes, Mrs. Helder.
Well, I never knew the whole thing, you understand. It was none of my business, and I didn't wish to pry. But when it became painfully obvious to Alex and me that whenever we went in to see the Greys, or if they came to see us, Fiona would use the occasion to get at Rick, quite openly in the end. Accusations, insults, that sort of thing.
You're saying, then, that you observed a regular pattern of recrimination by the accused against her husband?
Yes. It was very embarrassing, but... well, par for the course, according to the rest of the district. Poor Rick, he seldom said a thing. He just sat there, grinning and bearing it.
And what was the nature of the insults and accusations directed at her husband by Mrs. Gray?
Well, they were pretty vague, really, when you came down to it. Fiona seemed to think that Rick didn't pay her enough attention. He left her alone too often, neglected her. It was mostly nonsense, I think. But Fiona used even to say that one day she'd make Rick pay for it all.
One day she'd make Rick pay for it all?
Yes.
Mrs. Helder, did you have any contact with the accused outside of your respective homes?
Yes. At one time, I got the notion that part of what ailed Fiona was the fact that she spent too much time at home alone with her kids. She never bestirred herself to go out. So I made a determined effort to try and interest her in things that went on round the district, the bridge circle, the art group.
And what was the result of that, Mrs. Helder?
Well, introducing her to the bridge circle was a major error of strategy, as it turned out. The echoes still reverberate around the neighbourhood. And as for the art group, well, we all know what happened there, don't we?
I did, Mrs. Helder.
They're being divorced, aren't they? The Greys. I take it that's a direct result of Fiona's activities at the art group.
My lord, the witness has no right to make a comment like that.
I quite agree, Miss Tate. You will ignore that last remark of the witness. But is it in fact true, Miss Tate, that the accused and her husband are at the moment seeking a divorce?
Yes, my lord. The position is that some 3 weeks after the burning down of the property, Richard Gray filed suit for divorce against his wife.
Indeed, I see. Carry on, Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you, my lord. Mrs. Helder, were you at home on the evening of June 28th last at about 7 p.m?
Yes, I was. I was expecting my husband, and I was in the kitchen getting a meal. Our kitchen overlooked the garage of number 7 Adelaide.
And the garage adjoined number 7, did it?
Yes.
And did you see something going on in the garage that evening that caught your attention?
Yes, well, it was still broad daylight, and the distance involved was only about 30 yards. Fiona seemed to be hurrying in and out of the garage, getting armfuls of packing case straw and wood from somewhere round the corner, and taking them back inside the garage. She was moving deliberately.
This struck you as being strange, did it?
Well, it was the way she moved as much as anything. Quickly, jerkily even, but as if with a definite sense of purpose. There'd been a row earlier in the day. I hadn't heard what was said precisely, but, you know, things hurled after Rick as he left for work in the morning, and so all day long I'd known that something was wrong. And then, when I saw the flames...
Now, they started from within the garage, did they?
Yes. It was extraordinarily sudden. Just a huge crackle and then a vast sheet of flame. I got the most terrible shock.
What did you do, Mrs. Helder?
For the moment, I just stood there, rooted to the spot. And then it at once occurred to me that maybe Fiona was still in the garage, in the midst of this dreadful blaze. But I saw no, she was standing some way from it, towards our fence, in fact, just staring at the flames.
Simply staring at them?
Yes. I came to, I raced outside, and other people were beginning to emerge by this time. John Ferris from across the close shouted that he'd already called the fire brigade, and other people were rushing up. I rushed over to Fiona. Fiona, I said, Fiona, where are the children?
What made you think of the children, Mrs. Helder?
Well, they simply weren't in evidence.
I see. And did Mrs. Gray reply to you?
Yes. Yes, what she said was, they aren't my children, Bobby. They're his.
Now, let us be quite clear of the words here, please. They aren't my children, Bobby. They're his.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, just that, and staring blankly at the flames. So I said to some of the men, I think the children are still inside, so some of them raced round the back and burst in. The fire was still mainly confined to the garage. They found the children in bed. Terence was reading and Adrian was asleep.
And they brought them out?
Yes.
And how did Mrs. Gray react when she saw her children, Mrs. Helder?
Oh, well, then she went to pieces. She broke down entirely. Well, you see, it was only just in time that the boys had been saved, really. Because barely 5 minutes later there was another huge crackle and, well, the whole building seemed to be engulfed in flames. That was just as the fire brigade arrived, actually, and, of course, by this time there was very little they could do except try and keep the fire under control and protect other people's property.
Yes, I see. Now, did Mrs. Gray say anything else to you that evening that you particularly recall?
Yes, well, Rick arrived home from work just as the fire brigade was going into action, and everything then got very confused and hysterical. So Angela Blaney said that she would take the boys, and I persuaded Fiona to come back to our place and rest. She started to mumble something just as I was getting her something to drink. I heard her say, "Now he'll never love me again. Never again. I've destroyed his precious house, and so he'll punish me."
And how did Mrs. Gray say that exactly? To herself, or not very clearly?
Well, loudly enough, though I'm still not sure if it was intended for my ears or not. Her tone was remorseful, like a person confessing guilt.
Thank you, Mrs. Helder. Will you wait there, please?
Miss Tate?
Mrs. Helder, you tell us that when, when you and your husband first got to know Rick and Fiona Gray, you were puzzled by the accusations levelled against her husband by Mrs. Gray, namely, not paying enough attention to her and leaving her alone too often.
Yes.
Now, why were you so bothered? Didn't these accusations bear any relation to reality?
Well, no, none whatsoever, as far as I'm aware, Miss Tate. Rick was attentive enough to his wife. He would take her out for an evening every so often. In fact, he was a very home-loving person who seldom stayed out much at nights at all unless business demanded it.
You never treated Mrs. Gray's accusations as normal, then, did you?
I'm sorry?
As the accusations of a completely normal woman, Mrs. Helder.
Oh, well, as to that, I thought them unjustified.
Now, you tell us again that when you introduced her to the bridge circle, it was a major error of strategy. Now, why was that? What happened?
Well, Fiona happened to the bridge circle. I can't remember all the ins and outs exactly now, but, well, it seemed that in a remarkably short space of time, half the members of the club were at each other's throats. Fiona had started making accusations, just as with Rick, stirring up a hornet's nest.
What sort of accusations?
Oh, wasting time, not taking life seriously, sitting around playing cards instead of doing something useful.
Did the accusations have any foundation, in fact?
Well, of course not. We're all very busy people, but, oh, we are entitled to a little relaxation from time to time, sure.
Again, not the accusations of a completely normal woman, Mrs. Helder.
Miss Tate, Fiona Gray has always struck me as a perfectly normal person. It's just that she refused to control her tongue. She was hypercritical towards other people, and she simply didn't care what she said. It's the way some women are.
A matter of character, then. Inborn and unavoidable?
Yes.
Now, you also introduced Mrs. Gray to the Coldwater Valley Arts Society, didn't you?
Yes.
And was the tutor at that society the certain Mr. Gilbert Brinsley?
Yes, he was.
And did you notice that from the first time Mrs. Gray attended the society that Mr. Brinsley was attracted to her?
I noticed something mutual, I prefer to say.
That's not what I asked you, Mrs. Helder. I said, did you notice that Mr. Brinsley was attracted to Mrs. Gray?
Oh, yes, he danced attendance on her a little, I suppose. None of the rest of us were completely sure why.
Thank you. Now let's come to the evening that number 7 Adelaide Close burned down, shall we? Would you have said that on that occasion Fiona Gray was in a perfectly normal condition?
Miss Tate, I hadn't seen Fiona all of that day, and when finally I did speak to her, her house was in flames.
Yet she did seem to be behaving rather oddly, don't you think? Just standing there, staring at the flames, quite unaware that her children were inside.
Well, hypnotised, more than likely. That sheet of flame shooting out of the garage door was really frightening.
Yet the effect of your testimony, Mrs. Helder, is that Fiona Gray started the fire. Now, are you now telling us that she did that knowing full well that her children were in the house and quite heedless of their fate, and that that is normal?
Well, it is all extremely weird in its way, I will grant you that. But, well, think of that strange remark she made to me. They're not my children, Bobby, they're his.
Oh, yes, that remark. Now, what did you take that to mean exactly?
Well, just what it says, I suppose, that she'd come to think of Terence and Adrian as not her children, but as Rick's.
And that later remark, the mumbled one in the house, now he'll never love me, never again. I've destroyed his precious house, and so he'll punish me.
Well, yes, that's more mysterious, of course. But, some sort of reference to Rick, I suppose? What
His
else?
precious house. Now, was Mr. Gray particularly house-proud, do you happen to know?
No, not particularly.
He'll punish me. Was Mr. Gray in the habit of chastising his wife, perhaps?
What do you mean by that?
Disciplining her. Beating her, even. I mean, it's such a strange expression to use, punish me.
Fiona was upset, obviously. And, well, she was speaking in a heightened fashion.
Not normally, in other words.
Miss Tate, I really can't tell you whether Fiona Gray was normal or abnormal on the night that she burned her house down.
Oh, come, Mrs. Helder, I'm perfectly sure you can. You knew Mrs. Gray well. I'm asking you whether she seemed to be acting normally that night when, knowing full well that her children were in the house, she lit that fire.
Yes. Perhaps. She wasn't a devoted mother, you know. Not in the least. Things were really very bad between her and Rick. And Fiona simply despised the whole setup. Once, in a moment of confidence, she even told me that she thought she hated her children.
You are Richard Francis Gray, presently of 14 Chatterton Avenue, Fulchester.
Yes, I am. It's a temporary address. It's my mother's place, where I've been living with my 2 sons ever since my own house was destroyed by fire.
What is your relationship to the accused, please?
I've instituted divorce proceedings against her, but she's my wife.
Exactly, Mr. Gray. And since the accused is still your wife, I must make quite sure you understand you are in no way obliged to testify against her.
Thank you, my lord. I do understand that.
You come here today of your own free will to give your testimony.
Completely of my own free will, yes.
Good, thank you. Right, carry on, Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Gray, what's the relationship between you and your wife been like over the last few years? Happy?
No, very bad, growing steadily worse.
What was the main reason for this?
Difficult to say precisely. All I know for sure is that it's been very difficult to live with my wife over the last few years. Her criticisms have almost driven me out of my mind, and her demands have been insupportable.
What demands, exactly?
What demands on my time, my presence? I had to punch clocks for her, if you see what I mean. Well, for example, if I was 5 minutes late home from work in the evening, then I was neglecting her, and if I refused to cooperate with her whim of the moment, say, shifting the furniture, and she was a great shifter of furniture in certain moods, then I was being obstructive and unsympathetic towards her problems.
And was this different from the original relationship the two of you had enjoyed?
Oh, yes, completely different. Yet I hadn't changed as far as I was aware. I did everything to show my concern for Fiona. I tried to love her, and everything was as right as rain until after Adrian was born. That was about 5 years ago, and then there was a slow turning against me.
I see. Well, I now have some rather more intimate questions to ask you, Mr. Gray. How long is it, please, since you and Mrs. Gray lived together as husband and wife?
Up until the time of the fire, we'd been strangers under the same roof for the best part of a year. After a particularly nasty scene, my wife made it obvious to me that she wanted nothing more to do with me in that way. We still went out together. We kept up appearances, but nothing more.
It was your wife who rejected you. You did not reject her.
Oh, there's no argument about that at all. I did my best, in fact, to bring about a reconciliation, to get a new understanding going. I didn't like the situation the way it was, and I hope I was patient.
So through a difficult year, you adopted a policy of toleration and of hope.
Yes, that's right.
Did your wife do something of the same?
No. On the morning of June 28th last, just as I was leaving for work, my wife announced to me that for the past 3 months or so she'd had a lover. A man called Brinsley, it appears, Gilbert Brinsley. He was a tutor at a local art group.
How did you react to this information, Mr. Gray?
Well, it took me completely by surprise. I was astonished, and then I was deeply angry. I told my wife that this meant the finish between us after all I'd put up with over the last few years, that this was too much. I said I would start divorce proceedings that same day and that I would see my lawyer then. I would also make arrangements for the 2 boys to come and live with me and my mother's in the meantime.
Why that, Mr. Gray? Why did you want to take the boys with you?
Well, it seemed right under the circumstances. I mean, the home could hardly be considered to be the most improving atmosphere anymore.
Did your wife object in any way?
Yes, but only to make the right noises, I think. She was more concerned with herself than for the children.
In general, Mr. Gray, what was your wife's attitude towards these children?
I think she disliked them. It was a growing attitude, turning to hate. I think she resented their existence because in her mind...
Just 1 moment, Mr. Gray. Members of the jury, you must disregard that last remark of Mr. Gray's. What he thinks about his wife's view of her children is not evidence.
Now, when you returned home from work on the evening of June 28th last year, Mr. Gray, your house was in flames and the fire brigade was fighting the fire. Is that correct?
Yes.
What did you do, please?
Well, at first I couldn't believe it. I just stood there, staring at the flames. And then I saw the 2 boys being hurried out of the gate by Mrs. Blaney, a neighbour. And they were frightened, and they were crying. And Fiona was there, and she was crying too, and I just rushed at her, and I shouted at her, "What have you done now? What now?" And she came straight back at me with, "It's what you've always wanted, isn't it? The finish between us. Well, now I've done you a favour."
The next question is very important, Mr. Gray. What state was your wife in at this time?
State, I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Well, did she recognise you the moment you arrived, for instance?
Yes, recognised me, yes, she did.
Did she hear what you said? Did she understand you?
Yes.
There was no confusion, in other words. She didn't seem dazed or unaware of her surroundings.
No, not at all. No, I had to ask Mrs. Helder from next door to take her away and look after her while I tried to get other things sorted out.
Mr. Gray, why precisely did you shout, "What have you done now," to your wife? It's as though you immediately took it for granted she must have had something to do with the fire.
My lord, I knew straight away that Fiona had everything to do with the fire.
Oh, indeed? Why was that?
Because it's what she's always threatened to do. Time and again, when we'd argue, she'd finish up with, "Anyway, I hate this house. It's your house, it's not my house, and for 2 pins, I could set a match to it."
Thank you, Mr. Gray. No further questions.
Mr.
Mr. Gray, perhaps in the first place you'd better tell us why you chose to give evidence against your wife today.
I don't have a choice anymore. Valuable property has been destroyed. Life has been placed in jeopardy. I don't mean only the lives of my own 2 sons who were in the house when it was fired, but, well, other lives. The whole neighbourhood could have been destroyed.
Mr. Gray, did you really take your wife seriously on any occasion when she said that she hated your house and for 2 pins she'd burn it down?
In the event, she did burn it down.
Nevertheless, if you had taken your wife seriously, then wouldn't you have taken some steps to make sure she hadn't the chance to burn it down?
I'm not sure what those steps would be. Anyway, it was rather a case of a boy who cried wolf in the end. Fiona just threatened, and I just ceased to bother about it.
Now, you and your wife have been married how many years, did you say?
8 years, nearly 9.
Your eldest son, Terence, is 7, and Adrian, I think you told us, is nearly 5.
Yes, that's right.
And things were as right as rain between you and your wife until after Adrian was born. So that leaves approximately 4 years in which this relationship seems to have deteriorated. Now, surely there must have been some reason for this?
I suppose so, but as far as I was concerned, Fiona just turned against me, that's all.
Started to criticize and make excessive demands on you.
Yes.
Didn't you ever ask yourself why this might be, Mr. Gray?
Yes, of course I did, but I couldn't come up with an answer then, and I still can't.
It didn't seem to you that perhaps some critical change was taking place in your wife?
Change? What change?
Well, how had she been before this turning against you began?
Oh, reasonable, agreeable, affectionate, concerned for me.
Malleable?
What?
Had your wife always gone along with whatever you said, perhaps, without complaint?
Yes, of course.
She never questioned your decisions?
Fiona didn't like making decisions for herself. even the simplest domestic ones could throw her into a terrible state sometime. Anyway, she knew that I always acted in her best interests.
In her best interests, of course. And it was in her best interest that you retain number 7 Adelaide Close as your exclusive property, did it, Mr. Gray?
Sorry?
Well, could your wife in any real sense be called a part owner of her family home?
I don't know what that means. We were husband and wife, and it was our home.
Yet your wife did ask you if you would put the property in her name as well as your own, and you refused.
My lord, I'm not sure what esoteric purpose in the defence's grand design these last few questions are meant to serve, but to me they seem plainly irrelevant.
Yes, Miss Tate, I too would like to know where this line of interrogation is leading you. As far as I'm aware, the witness could never have been under any obligation to put the family home in his wife's name as well as his own. The fact that he did not do so, even though she requested it, is nothing to do with the case.
With respect, my lord, I'm suggesting that this matter assumed exaggerated importance in my client's mind and consequently led her to extravagant action.
Oh, dear me, Miss Tate, I do hope we're not in for a deal of psychological digging in this case. Now, you know as well as I do that any plea of diminished responsibility is quite out of the question here. If you do not contest that the accused built the fire and struck the match which destroyed the family home, then all you can do is try to show that she didn't know what she was doing when she performed those actions.
And that, my lord, is precisely what I'm trying to show, that my client acted automatically without true consciousness when she burned down the home.
Miss Tate, you will not do that by arguing about who held the deeds to the property and whether or not it was a good thing. They may be arguments for a meeting of the Women's Rights Association, but certainly not for this court.
Yes, of course, my lord. Thank you. Mr. Gray, did you hate your wife?
Hate her?
Yes.
Of course not. I did everything to prove that I loved her.
And yet you thought her attitude towards the children altogether deficient. And for something like 12 months prior to the burning of the house, there was no sexual contact between you.
That was her idea, not mine.
Oh, but you didn't let her get away with it, surely.
What?
Well, I say that, as a sensitive man, you must have realized that your wife, in behaving as she did, was behaving neurotically. Now, surely you treated her with some particular consideration? Powers of persuasion, even?
I don't know what that means. What are you suggesting I should have done in such a situation? Raped her? I mean, what can a man do in a situation like that? When a woman says no, she says no.
Oh, perhaps. And anyway, there's always plenty of fish in the sea as far as...
Lord!
Miss Tate, that type of offensive remark is precisely what we should try to avoid in this case, surely.
With respect, my lord, the point is that the witness himself may not realize yet he did neglect his wife, so that when she joined this art society, she was more or less forced into her affair with Gilbert Brinsley.
She was not forced into an affair with Gilbert Brinsley. She went into it coldly and deliberately as a rejection of me.
Following what could only be interpreted as a similar rejection by you, Mr.
All
Gray.
right, perhaps I did come to hate Fiona in a way, to reject her. But it was very difficult, you see. You couldn't depend on Fiona for adult responses. You had to see to her constantly. Well, that's it. Being married to Fiona was like being married to a demanding child, to a little girl who refused to grow up.
The case of the Queen against Gray will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. On June the 28th, Rick Gray returned home to find his luxury house in flames. His wife Fiona and their 2 children, Terence and Adrian, were safe, but it seemed the fire had been started deliberately. Further investigations have resulted in a charge of arson against his wife, Fiona Gray. Evidence so far presented in the Crown Court would seem to suggest that Mrs. Gray had, on more than one occasion, threatened to burn the family home down. Mr. Gray, who is in the process of divorcing his wife, has just finished saying that life with her was like living with a demanding child who refused to grow up.
Now, I have only a few more questions, Mr. Gray. On the morning of June the 28th, just as you were leaving for work, your wife told you of her affair with Gilbert Brinsley, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, how did she tell you this precisely? Proudly? Defiantly?
Well, no, she was rather subdued about it.
Indifferent, then? Ashamed?
No. It's difficult to recall exactly. She was very upset, I remember that.
Crying, you mean?
Well, yes.
More ashamed than anything else?
Possibly, yes.
And you tried to find out the whys and wherefores of the matter, did you?
Sorry?
Well, since your wife had freely confessed to this affair, you were obviously concerned to know what had led her to it.
I didn't ask any questions, if that's what you mean.
Not then or at any other time?
No.
Yet you did consider it extraordinary behaviour, Mr. Gray.
Well, she'd never done anything like it before, to the best of my knowledge.
And she was in tears and asking you to forgive her?
No, she never said anything like that.
Well, a woman doesn't always have to say it, Mr. Gray, only to be know someone understands.
Miss Tate, I've just taken too much over the years. It was just one damned thing after another, and adultery just seemed to me to be, well, to be the last straw.
So on the morning of June the 28th, you simply left Mrs. Gray to the consequences of her remorse, whatever they might be, and you went to work.
Well, I honestly couldn't think...
Is that true, Mr. Gray?
Yes, that's true.
Now, you tell us that when, on that same morning, you told her that you were taking the boys to your mother's house, she protested only by way of making the right noises.
Yes.
So when she protested about you having the custody of the children, you told her she didn't really want them and she was only making the right noises.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
No re-examination.
You may stand down, Mr. Gray.
I call Gilbert Brinsley.
Gilbert Edward Brinsley, please.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Gilbert Edward Brinsley, and you live at 43 Otterton Street, Fulchester.
That's right.
And until August of last year, you were in part-time employment as tutor to an amateur painting group known as the Coldwater Valley Art Society.
I was, yes.
What qualified you for that work exactly?
I'm an art teacher by profession. The Coldwater Society was one of several that I acted as tutor to. I run a session there in the village hall on Thursday mornings.
Mr. Brinsley, why did you terminate this employment? It is over, I believe.
Yes, there was an embarrassment that I was involved in. I thought it best for all concerned if I resigned.
I see.
Now, can you tell us something of the composition of the Coldwater Valley Art Society? What kind of people attended it? How many?
It was an ad hoc group, like most of these things. The ladies of the village, one old gentleman. I had a hard core of 15 members. Other people dropped in from time to time as the fancy took them. It was fairly informal.
Do you know the accused, Fiona Gray?
Yes, I do. Mrs. Gray was one of my regular pupils. She'd been attending the sessions from December onwards. She'd been introduced by another society member, Mrs. Helder.
Were you associated with the accused in a rather more intimate way than this, Mr. Brinsley?
You must answer, you know, Mr. Brinsley. We can't avoid this issue.
But I object, my lord. I didn't want to come here. I don't see this has anything
Mr.
to do with
Brinsley.
me. I don't think I should be asked questions like this.
Mr.
If I
Brinsley,
hadn't...
this is a court of law and you are here to give evidence. Now, counsel has asked, were you associated with the accused in a rather more intimate way than you have yet indicated? Please answer that question.
From April to June last, Fiona Gray and I were lovers, to coin a phrase.
What does to coin a phrase mean?
Well, it wasn't exactly a grand tempestuous affair, you know. On the contrary, it was very tentative, very foolish. It was just at the time I was as lonely as Mrs. Gray was desperate.
As lonely as she was desperate. Perhaps you'd better tell us about it in detail.
Well, it began with my pointing out that her line drawings were rather weak. She agreed that they were. She asked if I'd give her some individual tuition. So I told her to wait behind for half an hour after the session. Well, there was a tenseness about her that I found attractive. It seems that she and her husband were in difficulties. They didn't get on. It got on her mind.
Got on her mind, Mr. Brinsley?
Yes, it aggravated her, irritated her. She seemed to want to get back at her husband.
Did she say that to you, that she wanted to get back at her husband?
Yes, from time to time.
Through an affair with you?
Yes, I suppose that's what it came down to. Look, I'm bound to say, though, that from the beginning it was more her idea than mine. If it had been left to me, I don't think I would have followed my inclinations. Look, I don't consider myself a promiscuous sort of person. It's just that I've never been one to form lasting relationships. You see, for most of my adult life, I've had to cope with an invalid mother. So it's meant that marriage has been out of the question. So I've responded to the situation as it presented itself.
In any event, Mrs. Gray provided you with the encouragement to have an affair with her.
Yes.
Now, was there anything else that happened during the course of your relationship that persuaded you that Mrs. Gray was anxious to use you to injure her husband?
Well, you can't always be certain of such things. Fiona was a very tense and anxious woman. She didn't always say what she thought.
Please, Mr. Brinsley, was there anything else?
Again, I must insist that you answer, Mr. Brinsley. You know, really you gain nothing at all by hesitating in this deliberately bashful manner.
It isn't bashfulness, my lord. One day in June, when we were alone together, Fiona said that she wanted to really hurt her husband. She wanted me to help her. She had a plan. One Sunday, she was going to get her husband and the children out of the house, and I was to set fire to the place. He would come home and find the charred embers.
I see. And how did you respond to this suggestion, Mr. Brinsley?
Naturally, I didn't take it seriously for a minute. I told her not to be so stupid. But then, as we know, a fortnight later, there was a fire.
Now, after the conversation in which you refused to have anything to do with her plan to set fire to the house, did you see Mrs. Gray again?
No.
Did you try to?
Yes, I telephoned her. She said she didn't want anything more to do with me. It was all over.
Thank you, Mr. Brinsley.
Miss Tate?
Mr. Brinsley, did Mrs. Gray often talk stupidly in your presence?
I beg your pardon?
Well, you've just told us of a pretty alarming suggestion she made to you about her husband's house, but you seem not to have been particularly bothered by it. You merely dismissed it as talking stupidly.
Well, Fiona didn't always think before she spoke.
Well, how then to be certain what she truly meant and what she didn't about anything?
Yes.
Can you swear that when she turned to you for love, it was only to get back at her husband?
Well, she said she wanted to get back at him. I suppose it came down to that.
Your own easy charm had nothing to do with it.
Oh, what sort of a question is that? I don't think that...
Well, wasn't it obvious to you that she was a woman deprived of love, starved of it even, and that was why she turned to you?
Well, there was something of that in it. I don't deny it.
Oh, really, Miss Tate, you must be more particular with your questions. Now, Mr. Brinsley, did she ever say to you that she needed love or affection or anything like that?
Yes, sometimes she did say things like that.
Now, you've told us that when it came to the act of love between you and Mrs. Gray, it was more her idea than yours.
Yes.
Can you amplify that remark, please?
Do you mean give details?
Really, Mr. Brinsley, for a man who can distinguish so well between what it is to be promiscuous and what to respond to a situation, you are remarkably reticent. But I'll put the question in another way. Did you seduce Fiona Gray, or did she seduce you?
Look, it wasn't like that. Look, I've told you, it was very reluctant and shy. You've no right to put it in those terms. Because, as I recall, it began when I touched her hand. I was trying to show her how a line should go. But I knew the moment I touched her hand that that's what she wanted. She was trembling. She looked at me. I just knew.
And this brazened absence of restraint on the part of a married woman was enough to make the whole affair more her idea than yours.
You don't understand. There was something...
Oh, I think I do understand, Mr. Brinsley. I understand very well. Now, what sort of person did you find Fiona Gray to be in that brief period that you were lovers? Was she a confident person, independent-minded?
No, quite the contrary.
Insecure, then? In need of constant reassurance and encouragement?
Yes, basically.
A child, in fact?
Well...
Just yes or no, Mr. Brinsley?
Well, yes, but let's get one thing straight. Fiona Gray had her own subtle way of controlling a situation. I mean, though she tried very hard to convince you she was all desperately helpless, in a strange way, she was the stronger. I mean, she wanted me to burn her husband's house down. And if I'd been a tiny bit more under a spell, I might even have done it. Look, she could manipulate people. She could bewitch them.
Do you know, Mr. Brinsley, I don't suppose that excuse has been used in a court of law since the 17th century. So now, Fiona Gray is a witch who compelled a virtuous man to her bed by the black arts. You found an insecure, emotionally deprived woman and you used her for your own purposes, Mr. Brinsley. You did not respond to a situation, but you merely acted selfishly and without principles. It was not a case of her starting an affair and trying to use you, but of you acting as an old-fashioned seducer of an insecure and unstable woman. My lord, I intend to call only 2 witnesses for the defence, the accused herself and Dr. Lavinia Coey. Now, as the evidence of the accused may be a prolonged affair, and Dr. Coey is a professional woman who is already in court, I wondered if we could hear her evidence first.
Well, that would depend, Miss Tate. Mr. Lloyd, do you have any objection to this?
Am I to understand that Dr. Coey is being called to give expert evidence and for no other reason?
That is so, my lord.
Then I don't think I have any reasonable objection.
Then you may proceed, Miss Tate.
Thank you, my lord. Call Dr. Lavinia Coey.
Dr. Lavinia Coey, please.
What is your religion?
I'm Jewish.
Place your right hand on the testament and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Lavinia Coey, MB, and you live at 114 Bright Street, Fulchester.
Yes.
And you're the holder of a diploma of clinical psychology, and at present you're working in the psychiatric department of the Fulchester South Hospital.
That is correct.
Dr. Coey, would it be true to say that persons with psychological disorders can be walking about and doing things and yet be unaware of what they're doing, almost like sleepwalkers?
Yes, that is quite true.
Is this state known as automatism?
Yes, it is.
Now, Dr. Coey, are you acquainted with the accused in this case, Mrs. Fiona Gray?
I am. Mrs. Gray came to see me in September last on the recommendation of her GP. She was in a highly distraught condition. Her doctor was very worried about her.
Did you see Mrs. Gray on this one occasion in September, or were there other encounters?
I saw Mrs. Gray 3 times in all, the last session being in mid-October. I would have liked to have continued to treat her, but Mrs. Gray chose otherwise.
Chose otherwise?
Well, yes, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, who can say? You see, in my branch of medicine, you can't compel the sick person. It isn't like a casualty where you say to someone they've got a broken leg, you must keep the leg in plaster for a month. You have to have the free consent of the person to be treated.
But you had no doubt in your mind, Dr. Coey, that Mrs. Gray was a sick woman who needed treatment.
I felt she needed help.
There's a distinction?
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. You see, Mrs. Gray first came to see me 3 months after the burning down of her house. She was not in a state of crisis then, but she was extremely reticent. In fact, all that emerged was that she was deeply upset and distraught, and it was really difficult to make a totally satisfactory diagnosis.
Now, in saying that Mrs. Gray was reticent, do you mean that she refused to speak to you about certain things, Dr.
Well,
Coey?
yes, yes, there were blocks. For instance, towards the end of the first session, I asked her the usual questions about her background, childhood, and so on. Well, she evaded these, and I got the impression that she was annoyed with me. Then, when she arrived for the next appointment, she had a very determined expression on her face. She said she had something to tell me. She said that she'd made up her mind that she did not want to discuss her childhood at all. It had been a happy and luminous time for her, and she didn't want it spoiled by my questions. She was quite blunt, uncompromising.
How did you react to that, Dr. Coey?
Well, I was surprised at first, but then I realized that she needed to believe that. You see, Mrs. Gray had been all her life a person who had depended on others for her emotional security. Depended excessively, I mean. For instance, her demands on her husband were extraordinary, apparently. But all that meant was that she needed his strength so much that she had to make him go on proving that he possessed it.
I see. And would you call that a normal human condition, Dr. Coey, or a neurotic one?
Oh, it's neurotic, of course, but on the other hand, it doesn't automatically mean it's disabling. I mean, lots of people lead lives of critical emotional dependence and don't fail to be useful human beings, for all that, particularly women.
Women, Dr. Coey?
Oh, yes. Well, down the centuries, women have been kept in a subservient position. And, of course, this tends to make them more emotionally dependent than men. Their husbands and fathers prefer it that way, I'm afraid, even in in our enlightened age.
And would you say that something of this syndrome existed in Mrs. Gray?
Oh, unquestionably. You see, her education, for instance, hadn't been at all adequate to her intellect. Well, there'd been the early marriage, effectively transferring her directly from her father's care to her husband's, and then pregnancy, restrictive domestic ties almost at once.
Now, in April of last year, Mrs. Gray took a lover, the tutor of the art group that she attended. Did she tell you anything of this?
Yes. Yes, it interested me very much because, well, from what I could discover about her, it was an utterly uncharacteristic action.
Uncharacteristic action?
It didn't seem to fit in at all with Mrs. Gray's scale of values. She obviously felt a great deal of remorse about it. Well, then I found out that the reason that she'd taken up with the art tutor was because she had wanted her husband to put the family home in her name as well as his own, and that after a great deal of argument, he'd refused.
Something of an overreaction on Mrs. Gray's part, surely.
Well, it apparently meant a great deal to her to be the joint owner of the house she lived in. Well, it struck me as a sudden assertion of an independent personality, a symbol of an awakening maturity.
Maturity?
Well, yes. Women forced all their lives to be emotionally dependent, as Mrs. Gray seems to have been, well, they are condemned to a sort of prolonged childhood. Although they become grown women, they really remain little girls, with the husband taking over the responsibility from where the father left off. Well, that's quite all right as long as they actually don't start to grow up. But if the maturing process begins, well, there can be fireworks.
Miss Tate, this is all very interesting, but when shall we come to the point?
I won't be long, my lord.
Very well.
What do you mean by fireworks exactly, Dr. Coe? What happens?
Well, obviously that varies with individual cases, but, see, when there's a waking up to the fact that the personality is in chains, only half free, so to speak, well, there can be vast upsets. These can take the outward form of complaints and accusations.
Against the husband?
Well, yes, and then the tension becomes unbearable, and then there has to be a positive, resolving action.
Now, are you saying, Dr. Coe, that Mrs. Gray entered into her affair with Gilbert Brinsley as what might be described as an assertion of her growing maturity?
No. Well, nothing's quite as simple as that, but... Now, what I am saying is that after the rejection by her husband over the matter of the house, she needed desperately to do something to convince herself that she was a person in her own right and not merely his shadow.
Now, to come to the burning of the house, Dr. Coe, you've told us that psychological disorders can affect a person's consciousness. Now, could Mrs. Gray have been in a clouded and unclear state of mind when she burned down the house?
Oh, yes, almost. Necessarily, I should have said. In an even worse condition, in trauma.
Like a sleepwalker?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Coe.
Lloyd?
Dr. Coe, did you ask Mrs. Gray why she set fire to the house?
Oh, yes, of course. She said she hadn't any idea at all.
Did you believe that statement?
Well, I had no reason not to. It certainly seemed a very odd thing for her to have done.
Why odd?
Well, it didn't measure up or equate with the stress, as we say in clinical terms. See, on the morning of the burning, being very much ashamed, Mrs. Gray had told her husband of her affair with Gilbert Brinsley. She had hoped for forgiveness, but instead she received harshness. Her husband said he would have to seek a divorce. Well, that meant, you see, that perhaps childlike she would have to seek a revenge. But to burn down the house, no. No, that's altogether too extreme.
Dr. Coe, by your own admission, it was 3 months after she committed her act of arson,
my
after
lord, I
she
object.
burnt down the house, that you first met Mrs. Gray, wasn't it?
Yes.
Then you can't possibly know the state of her mind on the night of June the 28th, can you?
Well, I can reason it out with a fair degree of probability from what she told me. After all, that's part of my job.
Yes, but we do have evidence before the court that suggests quite clearly she was not in a sleepwalking state on that night, but that she recognised people and answered their questions. Her neighbours she even addressed by name. They're not my children, Bobby, they're his.
Mr. Lloyd, there is the simple fact of the children being in the house. Well, surely you realise that no mother could consciously burn down the house in which her children were sleeping. It's ridiculous.
Why is it? It may be even more calculated than we've yet allowed. Perhaps she reasoned that a sheet of flame in this populated area would quickly bring people and her children would be rescued. Her main concern was to perpetrate a gross and irresponsible act of revenge on her husband, what used at one time to be called a vicious deed.
Yes, well, perhaps, but I don't happen to accept those glib 19th century categories.
Any more than this court necessarily accepts your glib, up-to-date categories, Doctor. If you really don't think that people are capable of being malicious, wicked and evil, then your experience is very different from that of men of the law. We are not here to find excuses for the actions of the accused. We are here to judge her impartially and to see if those actions have resulted in a crime.
It really is very important for us to understand the state of mind of Mrs. Gray at the time of the fire, Dr. Curry. Now, you've spoken of a traumatic condition, and yet you say you find the burning down of the house is altogether too extreme a reaction to the stress under which Mrs. Gray was labouring.
Yes, yes, I do.
Well, you see, there remains an area of doubt, doesn't there? And unless you can resolve that for us, we're really very little advanced.
Thank you, my lord. So, Dr. Coe, you don't think that the accused would be capable of consciously setting fire to a house in which her children were sleeping?
No. No normal mother would consciously do such a thing.
Any more than she would consciously commit adultery?
I beg your pardon.
Yes, another glib 19th century category, Doctor. Doctor, it seems to me that in your book the accused can do no wrong. Because her husband refuses to put the house in her name as well as his own, she quite rightly goes and has an affair with Gilbert Brinsley. And because her monster husband then asks for a divorce, she quite rightly goes and burns his house down.
You can make a cheap joke of anything if you put your mind to it. Perhaps if you understood the pain that psychologically disturbed persons suffer, you wouldn't be quite so witty.
Doctor, is everything that psychologically disturbed persons do a compulsive action?
I don't understand.
Well, if I, as a psychologically disturbed person, go out and rob a bank, is that ipso facto an act to which I'm driven, or may it not also be a willful and criminal act?
Well, of course it may. The kind of actions to which psychologically disturbed persons are driven will be within the terms of their particular neurosis.
Actions which are therefore explicable, at least by an expert.
Yes.
Well, my dear Doctor, in this case, you are the expert, and you have failed to give us an explanation of the accused's actions. You have told his lordship that you don't know why she burnt the house down.
No, it is true that I don't. But Mrs. Gray would not permit deep analysis when she came to see me. A reason would have emerged from that. I have no doubt of it.
A reason emerges now, Doctor, clear as a crystal. It's just that you refuse to admit it. It was a deliberate act. It was an act of revenge directed against her husband, just as the adultery was such an act. Mrs. Gray is not a psychologically disturbed person, Doctor. She's simply an old-fashioned, faithless wife. And before this court, she is a criminal.
The case of the Queen against Gray will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The trial of Fiona Gray, accused of burning down her husband's house in the exclusive Coldwater Valley outside Fulchester, today enters its final stages. The defence so far has concentrated on Mrs. Gray's state of mind at the time she fired the bungalow, and has tried to show that she was in a condition of automatism, that is to say, unaware of what she was actually doing and therefore not responsible for it. Under cross-examination, a psychiatrist who treated Mrs. Gray has had to admit that both Mrs. Gray's adultery with Gilbert Brinsley, an art tutor, and the firing of the house were extreme reactions to stresses imposed on her by her life as an immature wife and mother, condemned to a kind of enduring childhood. However, the accused, Fiona Margaret Gray, has now been called to give evidence.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Fiona Margaret Gray, and at present you're living with your sister at 23 Argyle Street, Fulchester.
Yes.
Now, don't be afraid to speak up, Mrs. Gray. The jury wants to hear everything you have to say.
Yes. Yes, I'm sorry.
Now, Mrs. Gray, you're accused of having burned down your home at number 7 Adelaide Close, where you lived with your husband and 2 children. Now, can you tell us, is there any truth in these accusations?
I suppose there must be.
Now, what does that mean exactly? Yes?
It's just... people say I did it, don't they? Bobby says she saw me do it. Bobby from next door. Rick's in, no doubt, so I suppose I must have done.
So you're not really very clear in your mind about it even now? You're still confused?
I tried to say it to Dr. Coe when I saw her. If I burned Rick's house down, I've just no idea why.
Now, Rick's house, you always regarded the bungalow as Rick's exclusive property, did you? Mrs. Gray, can you remember anything of what happened on June the 28th?
I remember Rick was late. Yes. It had been an awful day, really. Because just that morning I'd told Rick of... well, a very stupid mistake I'd made, and he'd threatened divorce. I didn't know whether he was serious or if it was just another row. We'd had a lot of rows about that time. Blazing, idiotic rows. Rick wouldn't consider me, you see. Not properly. He'd neglect me, then expect me still to be a nice little wife to him. It was his marriage, not mine.
Mrs. Gray, this stupid mistake you said you made, what was that?
Oh, that was my affair with Gilbert Brinsley, the art tutor. Yes, I can't remember exactly why it happened now.
Was it a love affair, Mrs. Gray? Did you love Gilbert Brinsley?
No. Oh, no. That's what makes it so extraordinary. We had practically nothing in common.
Had you ever been unfaithful to your husband before, Mrs. Gray?
No, never in my life.
Then why this time? Surely there must have been some particular reason.
Well, I can't remember exactly. I was in a pretty bad state of mind when it happened. I remember even when it did happen, it seemed unreal. And afterwards I couldn't, well, get it in perspective. But then Gilbert expected things of me, and I had to go on.
You were seduced, in other words, were you, Mrs. Gray? A man who was attracted to you took advantage of your depressed mental condition.
Yes.
Did you feel guilty about the affair?
Oh, yes, very guilty. It got to be a pressure, in fact, building up inside me. You see, the reason I'd been depressed in the first place was because I asked Rick to put the family home in my name as well as his, and he refused. That hurt me very much.
But why, Mrs. Gray? Why hurt you? Why precisely was it so important to you to have the family house in your name as well as your husband's?
I'm not sure now. The house, well, it's the centre of your life, isn't it? You've got to feel it's yours, or you hate it.
Mrs. Gray, at a certain stage in your affair with Gilbert Brinsley, you put a certain suggestion to him concerning your husband's house.
Yes, sometime in June, I asked him if he'd help me destroy it by fire.
Now, why, Mrs. Gray? Why destroy it, and why by fire?
Mrs. Gray, it would help your case considerably if you could answer those 2 questions. You see, throughout this hearing, these 2 things have puzzled me. Why, no matter what your state of mind, you should have conceived the idea of destroying your husband's property, and then why you should want to do it by burning it down. Now, can you tell us anything at all that will help us?
Very well, Mrs. Gray. Let's consider something else, shall we? Your children were in the house when you lit that fire. Were you aware of that?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, you'd apparently just put them to bed before you lit the fire because Terence was still reading. Now, you don't recollect anything about that?
No.
As the flames shot out of the garage door, your neighbour, Mrs. Helder, asked you about the boys, and you apparently said to her, "They're not my children, Bobby, they're his."
Yes, that's right.
You do remember saying those words?
No. What I mean is, I understand how I could have said such a thing. It seems it was the way my mind had been going for a long time.
You'd really come to the conclusion that the children were more your husband's than your own, you mean?
It wasn't quite like that.
Well, how was it, Mrs. Gray?
Well, I'd come to believe they'd simply be better off as his. I wasn't reliable anymore, you see. I seemed to be such a mess.
And that was what you were implying when you said to Mrs. Helder, they're not my children, Bobby, they're his? Where are the boys now, incidentally, Mrs. Gray?
Oh, they're with my husband for the time being, at his mother's place.
Do you see them?
Yes. Oh, yes, whenever I want to.
Why aren't they with you, Mrs. Gray?
I didn't want that just now.
Why not?
Well, I thought all this should be cleared up first. I mean, I am a mess, aren't I? I didn't know what mightn't happen. I might even try to hurt them again. By all accounts, I as good as killed them that night.
Mrs. Gray. Mrs. Gray, when your neighbour, Mrs. Helder, took you into her house that night, she heard you say, now he'll never love me, never again. I've destroyed his precious house and he'll punish me. Now, do you recall using words like that?
No. No, I don't.
Mrs. Gray, what do you think you might have meant by those words if it were impressed upon you that you did use them?
I really haven't the faintest idea.
Mrs. Gray, could those words refer to your husband? Did he punish you? Were you expecting your husband to strike you, Mrs. Gray?
No answer. Well, Miss Tate?
No further questions, my lord.
Mr. Lloyd?
Well, Mrs. Gray, you seem to have answered some of the questions my friend has put to you. But then, of course, she has left out the important ones. I want to ask you a few questions about your relationship with your husband. When was it you ceased loving him, precisely?
What?
I said, when was it you ceased loving your husband? Plainly, there was a time after your marriage when you were in love, and then later...
But I never stopped loving Rick. Never.
Well, it has been testified that you used to criticise him publicly.
Well, yes,
and make
but that
excessive
doesn't mean...
demands on him. And we've even heard from Mr. Gray himself that at a certain point you made it quite clear you wanted nothing more to do with him in a sexual way. Is that true, Mrs. Gray?
Well, I didn't say as much, if that's what you mean. It just happened that way.
Why?
Sometimes in life you realise the way things have to be. I didn't hate Rick. I didn't even turn against him, as he's saying now. I simply knew that sort of relationship didn't make sense for us anymore.
That still isn't a reason, Mrs. Gray.
Well, then there isn't one. Goodness, I don't have to stand here answering ridiculous questions like this, do I? Any more than I had to answer that doctor's ridiculous questions about my childhood. My childhood was a marvellous time. By and large, I had a good marriage with Rick, too. If he thought I was cold, then it was his business to do something about it, wasn't it? That's a husband's duty, to cherish his wife. A wife has to respect her husband.
Respect, Mrs. Gray?
Yes, I always respected Rick. He can't deny it. And I worked hard, looking after his family. What more did he want?
Well, then can you tell the court why it was you got Gilbert Brinsley to try and burn your husband's house down?
Why?
Yes, we've heard a great deal of endless vague talk about whether you knew what you were doing when you burnt down the house yourself, but nothing about why at an earlier point you attempted to co-opt a partner in this crime.
I can't remember exactly. I was in a pretty bad state of mind. I suppose I wasn't very serious.
You were
about
serious enough to form a comprehensive plan.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Brinsley has testified that the notion was that you would get your husband and children out of the house on Sunday and that he would then set fire to it on your behalf.
Well...
Who would be guilty of arson then, Mrs. Gray? You or Mr. Brinsley?
Look, it's absurd.
It's a good thing that Mr. Brinsley thought it was absurd, as he'd have found himself in the dock today instead of you. Was it not in order to get him to burn the house down that you seduced him?
I didn't seduce him.
Now, another thing. You tell us that when you said to Mrs. Helder, they're not my children, Bobby, they're his, what you meant was that you'd come to look on yourself as unable to act responsibly as their mother any longer.
Yes, that's true. I would have meant something like that.
Oh, yes, of course, would have meant. For you don't remember very clearly, do you? You were acting automatically at the time.
I suppose I must have been, yes.
Yet you recognise Mrs. Helder. You called her Bobby. You recognise your husband moments later, and to his question, what have you done now? You replied, it's what you wanted, isn't it? The finish between us. I've done you a favour. And that was clearly a reference back to your argument of earlier that morning, which you'd remembered there in the middle of your blind, unconscious state.
Perhaps I was coming back to normal then. You can't tell.
Oh, please. The fact is you weren't in a trauma at all, were you, Mrs. Gray? You hated your husband for stating he was seeking a divorce, and you set fire to the house to be revenged on him.
No!
Well, what else? Just as earlier, you'd attempted to get Gilbert Brinsley to do the same thing for you. That is a declaration of intent, Mrs. Gray. It is a declaration of intent.
That's a dreadful accusation to make. I wouldn't put my children at risk. No woman
Your
would.
children, your husband's children.
I've explained
No,
about
you
that.
haven't. You actually once told Mrs. Helder that you thought you hated them.
Oh, you don't understand. Nobody does. Why do you go on at me? He was a hard man. So severe. I tried to make him love me, but it was no use. And that day he found me with the matches. He was so cruel. For my own good, he said. My own good. But he was cruel. Savage.
Do you feel well enough now to continue, Mrs. Gray?
Yes, my lord, I'm very sorry.
Mr. Lloyd?
Mrs. Gray, at the time when you were going to see Dr. Coe, why did you refuse to talk about your childhood?
I beg your pardon?
I said, look, didn't you hear the question, Mrs. Gray?
I'm sorry,
I'm
I
asking
don't
you
think...
why, when you went to see Dr. Coe, you refused to talk about your childhood.
My childhood?
Yes.
Well, why should I talk about my childhood? To Dr. Coe or anyone else? There's too much of this prying into people's pasts these days. One's childhood is one's own business.
It was a period of considerable distress for you then, was it?
No, not at all. My childhood was a marvellous period. I was blissfully happy as a child.
Tell me about your family.
My family?
Yes.
What about them?
Well, anything you like. How many brothers and sisters? Your mother, your father?
Oh, there were only my sister and myself. My older sister, Dilys. My mother was a gentle, quiet woman whom I never knew very well. She died when I was only 8.
And your father?
Oh, my father was a wonderful man. He was conscientious and strong-minded, though I don't think my sister Dilys quite appreciated that.
What does that mean, Mrs. Gray?
Well, I'm not telling tales. Dilys was just a natural-born rebel, I'm afraid. See, my father didn't believe in higher education for women, but Dilys wanted to go to university after school. In the end, she did, in spite of all my father's objections.
Until you were married, did you always live with your father, or did he send you away at any time?
Send me away? Why should he send me away?
Well, who knows? To school, perhaps?
I always lived with him.
Thank you, Mrs. Gray.
Miss Tate?
Your father didn't approve of higher education for women.
No.
Did that affect you, Mrs. Gray? Did you yourself desire to take up higher education after school? Mrs. Gray, you must attend to what I'm saying and answer the questions. Were you capable at school? Were you good at your work?
Really, I don't know why you're going on about this. I've told you as much about my early life now as any reasonable person could expect to hear.
Miss Tate, Mrs. Gray has just expressed a thought that was uppermost in my own mind.
My lord, my friend has cross-examined my client about her childhood, and I feel that I am entitled to re-examine her on that topic.
Very well, Miss Tate, I must rely on your good sense to know when to stop.
Well, what happened next, Mrs. Gray? Did you take a job?
No. Various types of positions were suggested, but somehow nothing entirely suitable ever seemed to turn up.
Again, it was your father who made the decision?
That's ridiculous. There were all sorts of other considerations by now. In any case, with Dilys gone, my father was quite alone in our home. I began to see it as my duty to look after him.
And your father encouraged this point of view, no doubt?
He was a good man. He thought of me, not himself. He had a bad heart and was worried about what might happen. He said I should think of getting married.
Did you want to marry Mrs. Gray?
Well, I hadn't thought much about it. I was only 19. What concerned me more was, well, if my father were to die, say, what could I do? Where would I be then?
You're saying that you were utterly dependent upon your father, and that life without him seemed inconceivable? Now listen, Mrs. Gray, this is very important to your case. The court is being most indulgent in allowing me to question you in this way. I am trying to help you. Why did you marry Rick Gray?
He came to the house one night. It was something to do with some advertising his firm was arranging for my father, and Rick was the bright young man who was supposed to solve all the problems. It was evident my father liked him. It was evident Rick liked me. He came back often. My father made no objection when he asked to take me out.
Had there been any other young man in your life?
A couple, but my father did...
Your father didn't approve. So in the end it was your father who chose a husband for you, was it? And very soon you woke up with 2 children by a man you didn't even like very much, only respected and depended upon utterly, just as you'd respected and depended upon your father before him. Mrs. Gray, did you hate your husband as cordially as you'd hated your father?
I didn't hate my father. I loved him. My father was a fine man, but very stern. All my life he'd been strict. There was a cellar where I used to play from time to time. I was about 10, I think. It was a dark and cold place. I was in a black state after my mother died. Nobody knows what that's like for a child. I played a game in which I was surviving against odds in some barren, icy landscape. The Arctic, perhaps. The game involved little scraps of food, splinters of wood, because I used to light tiny fires to keep myself warm. One day my father came into the cellar while I was preparing one of these games. He saw the little fire I'd built, the matches, the remains of other fires. Suddenly he was monstrously angry. I didn't know anyone could be so angry. He said I was trying to destroy everything he'd built up in his whole life. He said I was trying to kill him. He punished me, then locked me up in my room for a day, while he said he was deciding whether I should stay with him or shouldn't be put somewhere else. Nothing I said made any difference. Then or later, he wasn't interested in me, only in my being a good little girl.
Mrs. Gray, was all this in your mind on June the 28th last, the day you set fire to your husband's house?
If only Rick had put the house in my name too when I asked him to. That would have shown he saw me as his equal at least. Not like my father. Not the same.
Very well, Mrs. Gray, you may return to the dock.
That concludes the case for
Mr. Lloyd?
Members of the jury, it is beyond doubt Fiona Gray has had a hard life. It is beyond doubt she was misunderstood as a child, and it is beyond doubt she is a neurotic woman who deserves our sympathy. But it is also beyond doubt that on the evening of June the 28th of last year, she set fire to and destroyed the house in which she lived, and setting fire to that house was arson, and that is a criminal act. As it is beyond doubt that she did set fire to the house, her only defence is that when she committed this criminal act, she was in a state of automatism and totally and utterly unaware of her actions. But I maintain that this defence does not stand for these reasons. Dr. Coe, called by the defence as an expert witness, has admitted that Mrs. Gray's actions on the night of June the 28th were not a direct result of her neurosis, and in fact did not remotely equate to the stresses on her. On the night of the fire, she plainly recognised and spoke to her neighbour, she plainly recognised and spoke to her husband, easily referring back to a conversation of earlier that morning. And whatever she meant by her strange remark, "They're not my children, Bobby, they're his," she was, by virtue of saying it, telling Mrs. Helder she was aware the children were in the house. And finally, if indeed she had been acting automatically on the night, why is it that her husband, her lover, and her neighbour do not believe her? Setting fire to the house was an act which she had consciously discussed before, and I believe it was consciously committed on the night of June the 28th. And I must ask you, regardless of any personal sympathy you may well have for Mrs. Gray, to fulfil your lawful obligations as jurors and, on the evidence, find Fiona Gray guilty as she is charged.
Members of the jury, I think it is very obvious to all in this court today that Fiona Gray is a sick woman in desperate need of help. She is also a woman very much alone. We've seen how her husband, her lover, and her neighbour have all given evidence against her, and we've heard that she's been separated from her children for several months now. Fiona Gray is a woman who did not receive the education to allow her to reach her full potential. All her life she has depended upon others, first her father and later her husband. But after the second child was born, then she ceased to be this quiet, submissive wife and suddenly began to want to establish herself as a person in her own right. Finally, when after confessing to her husband about the lover, he told her that he wanted a divorce, she completely went to pieces and acted the way she did. I put it to you, members of the jury, that Fiona Gray did not know what she was doing when she lit the fire in that garage. Her children were in the house as she saw the flames enveloping it. At this very moment, members of the jury, Mrs. Gray is keeping herself away from her children in fear that she might hurt them. Is that a woman who would have deliberately lit a fire in a house knowing her children to be in it? Dr. Coe told us that she is a sick woman in desperate need of help and asking for the help in the only way she knows how. I do not believe that she was responsible for what she did on the night of June the 28th, and consequently, I ask you to find her not guilty of the charge of arson.
Members of the jury, you have a difficult task before you. What you have now to decide, reduced to its simplest terms, is, did Mrs. Gray know what she was doing when she acted in that manner? Now, there is little doubt that Mrs. Gray is a neurotic and unhappy woman. But unhappiness and desperation do not constitute a compulsion. Men and women who find their personal problems unbearable do frequently and in full consciousness commit crimes. And though we may sympathize with their circumstances, this in no way justifies their behavior. Automatism, however, is a condition in which a person ceases to be responsible for his actions, and it follows, therefore, that he cannot subsequently be held responsible for those actions. Members of the jury, it is for you to decide, did Mrs. Fiona Gray know what she was doing when on June the 28th she set fire to and destroyed her husband's home in that close? We'll now retire and consider your verdict.
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the prisoner Fiona Gray guilty or not guilty of arson?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of you all?
Yes.
Next week, you can join another jury when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.